Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hello.
It is time for Monday Mentor with Jen, and I am so excited to have my friend Lauren here today. I can't wait for you to hear the goodness that is Lauren Reedy. So Lauren started as a production assistant and moved to being a reporter, and along the way collected and earned 4 Emmys, and has now changed from being in front of the camera to helping people tell their story behind the camera. So Lauren, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun to be back in front of the camera again.
I know, I love it. And Lauren and I are like in real life friends. So
we are. You should know.
You just need to know. And both of us
it's maybe like a disclaimer in this live.
Right, it's a disclaimer, and to Enneagram 7s who are in real life friends.
Yes, in real life friends who also want to be friends with everyone. So it's great.
Exactly. You were in the right place if you like relationships. Here we are. So Lauren, I've given people, the highlight reel, but tell us a little bit about how did you start as a Midwestern reporter and move into owning your own company?
It's wild, Jen. It's wild. In fact, I was reading this weekend a quote on Instagram that said something like, if you could show your past self where you are now, would she believe it? And I wouldn't, because this is not where I thought I would be. I wanted to be the next Katie Couric or the next sideline reporter, Erin Andrews, on the sidelines for Sunday Night Football. And so I started my career covering sports, eventually moved into the news world because I didn't want to work when sports all happen, which if you think about nights, weekends, holidays, that's when everybody's gathered to watch, an event. So I got into news, and I actually love that because in news, there's always, you always have to dig for a story. And I loved that sort of challenge of getting assigned a story and trying to find people to tell that story around. I did that. I worked in Dubuque, Iowa, where I went to college, Loras College. Then I worked in Omaha, Nebraska, where I was born. So there's a whole like return home kind of thing there. I was in Omaha, Nebraska as an investigative backpack journalist. I did not carry a backpack around. It just meant that I could shoot all my own stuff myself. And then that got me the job here in Memphis, where I now live, as just a regular reporter. And I worked just about every shift you could have imagined, including the morning show. And I was also considered a backpack journalist. They call that an MMJ, a multimedia journalist, multi-platform. What it really means, Jen, is that I shot and edited all my own stuff. So like talking to you today, I have a camera set up. I did all that myself. I was having flashbacks. The thing about my whole kind of journey is the reason I got into it wasn't to be on camera. In fact, I still don't really love that part. It was to tell stories. I really loved capturing moments. I was the kid in high school that had a camera at my hip all the time. I captured video of everything and made like little mini documentaries on every band activity I went to or show choir. And so what was actually really deeply in me was this desire to tell stories. And if you watch the news, you know that those stories aren't always positive.
Yeah.
And that's what really started to wear on me is I was going live in front of crime tape. And I was telling people nothing except that someone was injured and that there was a police incident. It wasn't helping people do anything different. In fact, if anything, it was fear-mongering and making folks afraid to go out in their own community. Yeah. And I started to really feel that sucking on my soul. So simultaneously, I was taking video of all the activities I was involved in, and I started making little recaps for nonprofits that I volunteered with. And that's how Forever Ready started, accidentally, because I was telling stories for these nonprofits, and they would start saying, "Oh, can you do that for us? I would love it if you could make one for us." And I got to a certain point in my career where I had to decide I'm either going to keep reporting on what's happening in the news, or I'm going to have to stop doing that and do the business full time. And through a lot of identity crisis and turmoil and really discernment, I felt really called to take on the business full time. And so today we have 9 full-time employees. We're located in Memphis and Chicago, and I'm a business owner. It's so weird. It's so wild.
Oh my goodness. Now, some of you may be like, listen, I'm sitting at my, home office or possibly cubicle in corporate America. I'm not going to end up starting my own business, which is possibly true.
It's okay.
Which is totally fine. But I think the universal truth to what you just pulled out are 2 big things. One, we all have a story. Mm-hmm. We all have a story. We are wired for stories. Stories are important. And what was consistent in your life This is the thing I always did. And I call that your golden thread.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what's the golden thread that I always did? For me, it was always helping people
Mhm.
and making really heavy things lighter.
Mm.
And like that golden thread is where you start to find, well, maybe this isn't the cubicle for me. Maybe there's another cubicle for me, even if you don't end up starting your own business. But I love that what you were naturally doing through volunteer work, this something that you loved, turned into, you know, your own business, being a founder and leading a team of people.
Right. And I think what's really important about that, and it's something I have to remind myself daily, is that it's my story and no one else's. And so your story is going to be different than mine. And anybody who's watching this might also have a different outcome. In fact, I don't recommend that anybody try to repeat my story. I recommend they don't. But that's the key, is reminding yourself that what you do and what your path is going to be different than anyone else's. But it's going to be uniquely yours. And hopefully when you share it with other people, it inspires them to step more into their purpose, which is going to look different. But if something we say today, something we talk about, something that you share or I share about our personal journey to become this, if that inspires someone, that's really what it's about. The more you share, the more folks hear what you have to say, and might take a little nugget that you didn't even think was important in your story that they remember in the future.
I just like, that's it. We could like end now.
End scene.
End scene. Because when we tell our authentic stories, other people resonate, even with, you know, like, you're like, well, my kitchen table isn't mahogany. My kitchen table is pine. It doesn't matter. We all have a kitchen table.
Right.
And we all see each other in other people's stories. And like, I'm Shelby and Christina and other people who are watching, you know, are going to resonate with something that you said about this journey and where you didn't know you thought you'd be here because of that way. There's something that we all connect with stories. And so I'm curious if you could give us some idea about how do we identify our story that actually helps us leads to growth? Like, why is it so important for us to identify our own stories?
Well, what's really interesting about that is I'm in the process of sort of self-discovery in that realm, because I'm stepping back out in front, not necessarily in front of cameras, but I'm doing more speaking engagements and giving keynotes and workshops. And I always thought that you had to leave yourself out of that, which is hilarious, right? I'm literally on this live telling you, tell your story. It's inspiring. But as a journalist, right, you don't share your personal story because you are supposed to be objective and you're supposed to be, it's not about you. And so that's been something that's very hard for me to remember, is that I have all these years of experience out in the field working on daily stories that I had to turn for the daily newscasts. And then I have this added experience of running a business and telling some really deep, meaningful, action-oriented stories through my work at Forever Ready. And so I have to remind myself that too, but oftentimes it starts with your story is unique. So what you think isn't important or has irrelevance because it's your life is actually quite interesting to your outside audience. For example, I forget that because I was a TV reporter, that makes a lot of things I say interesting. And a lot of people have given me that feedback, and I'm like, "What? I worked for local news, you know, like I wasn't Katie Couric, but that experience and that part of my story, one, it gives a little bit of street cred, but also it's relatable for anybody who's ever watched the news, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it starts with recognizing that even though it seems ordinary to you, it is extraordinary to other people who don't experience that on a daily basis and haven't lived or walked in your shoes. And so I say, just start with telling your story. It doesn't have to be epic. It doesn't have to be something that happened to you that's extraordinary or that you think is extraordinary. It's really about, where are you from? How'd you get here? And we all have sort of that unique piece to tell. And there are little nuggets about that people pull and are inspired from.
Yeah. I think that is so key, that we think it has to be a big deal.
Right.
Like, we live in this kind of land of, well, the Kardashians do this, you know, or whatever else. It has to be some big epic tale that we are part of, you know, Scheherazade and 1,000 Nights, when really even that story, you know, this old ancient story, is made up of tiny little tales.
And they're every day, Jen. That's the thing. Every single day we have something that happens to us that is a story, and that could be shared with our audience or with our friends or with our family or with our coworkers, interactions on the streets, you name it. Like, there's so many things happening every day that can be a little nugget we pull from to tell a story.
Yeah. And, Shelby's saying, I always think my story isn't that exciting.
Not true, Shelby. I don't even know you. And I know that's not true because
know.
there's something about it that's unique.
But we all think that, like,
Yeah.
and so know that that's normal. Know
Yeah.
that it's normal that
Right.
people are like, my story isn't unique. But the thing that I think is so important is that it's the everyday, it's the ordinary that connects.
Right.
That's what makes us go, oh, you're a real person. And that relational connection is what is part of growing a business.
Right.
Like,
And it's so true because when I talk about the work, I don't talk about the epic stories we've told or the epic things that I've covered. I talk about the everyday. I talk about, we told this story about a guy who runs a bike shop, that now people know of. It doesn't have to be headline, stuff that's the top of the newscast or, viral stuff on TikTok or Instagram. Like whoever sees it, it makes a difference. And so I just tell people to get out there and say it and tell it. Yeah. Especially for the business owners that are watching. There's a story about how you became a business owner. There's a founder story there. There's a story about why you still do the work, no matter what you do or sell. I think there's value in sharing how you got there. We call that a founder story in our world. Mm-hmm. We're actually working on one right now for Jen about speaking. And I think those pieces are important because, one, they force us to step out to say something about ourselves. Yeah. But I think they also remind us why we do the work we do. And that's one of my favorite parts about the video medium is I might ask you a bunch of questions and then edit it together into a piece and show it to you. And you watch it and you go, wow, I really do that work. Huh. That's really impactful. And, it's important to recognize because we're all so busy, in the daily grind, trying to get the work done and keep the business coming, you name it. But to pause and recognize, oh, yes, okay, I do something that's pretty cool. And people want to hear about it.
Absolutely. And also the why is so incredibly valuable. When I'm working with companies on values alignment and culture. Culture is not, a Sunday bar, friends, as much as they are very fun. You have to know why you're doing something. And that almost always is wrapped in a story. Absolutely. Like, why are we doing this in a story? And then one of the other topics I talk on in keynotes and workshops is about burnout. And you can burn out doing something that you love, but you will always burn out if you don't know why you're doing it. And so that story is so why. And I love Michael's suggestion here of just writing down how great you are, keeping track of your accomplishments. Lauren and I were together at a retreat a couple of weeks ago, and one of our fellow retreat members is a psychologist, and she talked about keeping that winning journal and nice things that other people say about you is part of psychological fitness, but it also fits with what we're talking about of capturing those stories. Mm-hmm. So when you think about capturing story and that lens that you're talking about, just the everyday, how would you help people, give them a practical tip of, okay, how do I start to know how to capture maybe not even my big story, but just the stories that happen every day?
Well, I think journaling is a really big key to that. I try. I have a 4-year-old, so I try to journal. Sometimes if you go look at my journal, it's like a sentence in the middle is stopped because I've been interrupted by my wonderful child and want to give him the attention he's asking for. But I think journaling is good. I have so many videos and photos on my phone because I see something and I want to remember it. I don't take it because it takes me out of the moment. Some people are critical. Put your phone away, experience the moment. I love capturing it. And then I can go back. One of my favorite apps is Time Hop because I can go back and I can see photos. Sometimes they bring out really great memories and really great stories. Sometimes they bring out really hard stories, but they all bring out this memory in me. And so I tell people just start capturing, whether it's writing or shooting video of the things that are happening or taking a photo so you don't forget and then writing about what happened in that photo. I think that's where it starts. And then you look back, 6 months, 12 months later, and you've got this whole scrapbook of stories either captured in a photo, a video, or in what you've written that really make you go, okay, it was a good year. I mean, 2020, for example, right? We're all stuck at home and I'm trying to do all kinds of things to just meet the needs that are present, which weren't documentary filmmaking. If you were wondering, no one wanted a documentary that year. It was live streaming. But one of the things that I did all year is I captured everything that brought me joy. And at the end of the year, I put together a recap and I thought, 2020 was a bad year, but it wasn't that bad in the moments that I captured and the way that I started to see things because I was looking for the good stuff.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we ignore the bad. That doesn't mean we ignore the hard stuff. It's just to have those constant reminders about how we're surrounded with joy or how we're surrounded with really great moments. It also inspires others. I shared that video and people were like, this is so cool. All I did all year was just capture what I saw around me.
Yeah, the capturing, I think, is the key. However you capture it. I was super frustrated sitting at a lab. I was getting some blood work last week and I had an appointment, and an hour after my appointment, I still hadn't been called back. And I was just like, there is a story here.
Right.
And so I just pulled out my notes app and wrote down like a sentence about what was happening. And that really helped me kind of capture something that I haven't figured out how I want to use it yet. And I know that is so relatable. Like Shelby saying, the interruptions of motherhood are relatable. Waiting on an appointment that you are, that is important is relatable.
Right.
And those relatable stories, not just if you own your own business, but if you are leading a team and you're trying to clarify information, you're trying to motivate, a story is something that can really help your team latch onto and grow. So it's not just for the business owners, it's also for people who are inside those cubicles or in their remote offices, leading teams of people. A story is what's going to bring people into the moment and give them the picture of where you're wanting to go. Like Brene Brown says, paint done. That's a story. That's what that is. Okay. So, oh my gosh, it's time for us to start going.
Has it already been? It's already been 20 minutes.
No, you just either adjust expectations and make this longer or do something better to keep track of time. So Lauren, as an excellent documentary filmmaker who tells stories for different people and yourself, tell the people where they can find you and what you can do for them. So if you want to check out our company, it's right here, but give us the story.
Right over there. Okay. So we work primarily with nonprofits and small businesses, which is why I talk so much about story as business owners, because I think a lot of folks are so busy in the grind, they forget to tell their story. And we do that on purpose because nonprofits have amazing stories to tell and oftentimes don't have significant budgets. So we work with nonprofits to get creative about how we solve the budget problem and tell really high quality stories. We also work with small businesses to tell their brand story and a little bit more about the founder story to show the impact they make on the community that they work in or that they invest in. And then aside from that, I have started taking the show on the road, so to speak, literally, to talk about my experience in news and how one particular transformative moment led me on this new path that I'm now on today, and why that moment mattered. And it's funny because it's a moment where cameras weren't allowed, Jen. So I'm the video person telling people how to use video, how to capture stories. And I start my talk telling people about a time I couldn't capture video. But that's why it's so important. So you can check me out, foreverreadyproductions.com. We have, you can see over there. And then laurenreedy.com. I also have, you can see some of my fun videos. Of course, every vacation we go on, there's a recap video. But, the sort of external work of Forever Ready lives over there. And my excellent team is constantly updating our content and the stories we tell on all of our social media channels. So if you go to the website, you'll see at the bottom a link to our Instagram and our Facebook. And we're always posting stuff. I got folks on the team who just think of things to share with our audience every week. And some of it's funny, some of it's inspiring, but it really is all to draw us back to this idea that we can have impact when we share our story.
Absolutely. And your team is they have a special place in my heart. I was working with Lauren's team last month and did some Enneagram and communication work, and they are just a delightful group of people. So not only are they incredibly talented, they're lovely people to work with, that's
awesome. One of my favorite things. And I will say this to any leader that's out there. I think when you have people who work for you, it's not about making money, although you have to do that to, pay the bills, but I think it's about learning and teaching and mentoring and growing. And some of the best times that I've had with my team, unfortunately and fortunately, is when they grow out of the business and they grow into something that's more called to their purpose and challenges them to grow. And I think that's the most fulfilling part of the work we do, is not only our team, but the external teams we share stories about, they're really recognizing the impact they can have through their work, whether it's with us or someone else. And we celebrate that on the way out too.
Yeah. See, this is the kind of people we all want to be and work with. I love it. I love it. So make sure you check out Forever Ready Productions. They have beautiful work about telling their story. Lauren is a delight. She also has several other fun Instagram accounts with drone shots. And
yes, I should have grabbed the prop.
I've seen her grab a drone out of the air over a lake. It's kind of amazing.
Yes, you can find that at Ready She Drones.
There she goes. Ready She Drones. So Lauren, thank you so much for being our Monday mentor and reminding us how important stories are. And I just appreciate your time. Everybody, go check them out, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great week.